I would like to advise all those present that notice of this regular meeting of September 20th, 2023 has been provided to the public in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act of the State of New Jersey. Notice of time and place of this meeting has been included in the annual notice of meetings, which was posted and filed with the city clerk and with the Jersey Journal and the Star Ledger. An additional notice of time and place was posted and filed with the city clerk and was forwarded to the Jersey Journal and Star Ledger on September 15th, 2023. The regular meeting of the Municipal Council of the City of Bayonne is now in session. Ms. Medina, please call the roll.
Mr. Booker?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Perez?
Here.
Ms. Weimer?
Here.
Mr. La Palusa?
Here, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Medina, can you please read the resolution for our closed session?
The first item is R14, which is authorizing a closed session to discuss matters involving settlement and litigation pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12. Would like to move it.
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution for closed session, Mr. Booker?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Mr. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Weimer?
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa?
Aye.
We're going to adjourn to a closed session, and then we'll come back out.
Okay, Madeline, we can start. Motion?
Aye.
Mr. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Weimer?
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa?
Aye.
01 is an ordinance entitled Capital Ordinance providing for various technology improvements by and in the city of Bayonne, in the county of Hudson, state of New Jersey, appropriating $215,000, therefore, from the capital surplus fund to pay for the cost thereof, which was introduced and passed the first reading at a meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution moved by Council President La Palusa, giving the ordinance second reading. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
On the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, a capital ordinance providing for various technical improvements by and in the city of Bayonne, in the county of Hudson, state of New Jersey, and appropriating $215,000, therefore, from the capital surplus fund to pay for the cost thereof. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
So move.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Very glad to see this working. This took a long time to get this light, and for the enforcement of this signal, I vote aye.
No.
And I'm, again, very happy
With
to see.
voting on the capital ordinance.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I vote aye. Yeah.
And the resolution ordering final passage.
So move.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
02 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne establishing a traffic control signal at the intersection of Avenue C and 49th Street, which was introduced and passed the first reading at the meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution giving the ordinance second reading is moved by the council president. Mr. Carroll, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance of the City of Bayonne establishing a traffic control signal at the intersection of Avenue C and 49th Street. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
Move it.
Second.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
And again, very happy to see this come to fruition and a vote aye.
03 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne adopting the redevelopment plan entitled First Savings Redevelopment Plan for the property located at 562-568 Broadway, which is identified as Block 184, Lots 1, 2, and 3, as shown on the official tax map of the city pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law, which was introduced and passed at a reading at the meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin boards required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution moved by Council Member Perez, giving the ordinance second reading. Mr. La Palusa, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, a ordinance adopting the redevelopment plan entitled First Savings Redevelopment Plan for the property located at 562-568 Broadway, which is identified as Block 184, Lots 1, 2, and 3, as shown on the official tax map of the city pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objection, excuse me, I'm sorry. While there's no one who signed up to speak, I do have a communication from Gail Godesky of 828 Kennedy Boulevard. She says, good evening. My statement pertains to 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, and 08. It also pertains to ones for introduction, numbers 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I just need to be afforded the opportunity to have this read for the minutes on these projects in general. Thank you for your respect. As we all know, pilots are and were valuable tools that existed to incentivize private developers to invest in development of the property or areas of the municipality in a manner that may not be economically viable without financial incentives. A fact we often hear our elected officials reference. So you can all look the residents in the eyes and tell us that you honestly believe that these pilots would not be economically viable without a pilot. Before you answer that, I would like to refer to the NJ.com article of June 16, 2023. In quotes, the city is currently wrapping up a study intended to review the development under the Davis administration and chart the path forward. It found a 92.6% occupancy rate in the 20 new buildings analyzed, La Palusa previously said, end quote. If you cannot see 92.6% occupancy rate on all new developments is incentive enough for developers, then we have a bigger issue. Developers should be able to get fair financing agreements with 92.6% occupancy rate in comps and should no longer need the backs of we taxpayers to do that for them. Other facts about pilots, the ones we never hear elected officials taunt. The amount paid under pilots is always less than what would be obtained through conventional taxation. Pilots also unduly burden other taxpayers who must offset the subsidy through their own tax dollars. The pilot program calls for 90% of the payments to go to the municipality, 5% to the county, 5% to the library and open space, leaving the local school district with nothing. Under normal property taxation, a portion usually in The 50% range goes to the school district. We know that the schools always receive 100% payment from the city. That's the law, and we have to support the future regardless. The question is, where does the city get money for the schools to cover the school's portion of the taxes that the piloted properties do not contribute? You guessed it, the taxpayers. And just as a reminder, in another article on January 16, 2023, Lloyd, Jackie, and Gary, you all gave statements saying no more than 25 and 30-year financial agreements. Further, recently at several council meetings, Ms. Weimer and Mr. Carroll have also questioned these projects and pilots. Jackie, you also stated that the future financial agreements you would be looking for, and I quote, "I'm looking for assistance to infrastructure costs. I'm looking for the betterment of the community." Additionally, respectfully, Ms. Weimer, you said that the developers can offer more in return in the ways of community givebacks. So what infrastructure improvements are included in these projects? What community givebacks can we expect? Where are the affordable units? One thing Jersey City does well is with all the new luxury housing being built, they require affordable units. And she closes her letter with, "Note, this is the quote from the article. Weimer joined the city council last summer, and she was initially skeptical of whether pilot agreements were still needed, but after conversations with colleagues, has come to the belief that the developers often need them to make the projects financially viable." And she's got another paragraph here, I'm sorry. "So with all that being said, I strongly urge and suggest that everyone take a step back and look at what's really needed in the city at this time. We are building buildings in between 1 and 2 family houses. We're not seeing trees put into the new sidewalks or new sidewalks. We are not seeing commercial businesses that are needed within the city to enhance the quality of life as we grow. We all are in the same boat as our neighbors in Jersey City with tax increases. Thank you for your time. Good night." And with that, I'll take a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
So moved.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
And this is for
Oh,
the
three.
First Savings redevelopment
Right.
plan, right? Yeah. I saw the rendering for the building. I thought it would be a good fit, and I vote aye.
4 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, approving the financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Woodmont Bayonne Phase 2 Urban Renewal LLC for the property located on West 52nd Street, which property is identified as Block 37, Lot 1, as shown on the official tax map of the city, which was introduced and passed the first reading at a meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution moved by the council president, giving the ordinance second reading. Ms. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
And Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title. An ordinance approving a financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Woodmont Bayonne Phase 2 Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at West 52nd Street, which is identified as Block 37, Lot 1, as shown on the official tax map of the city. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
Move it.
Second.
On the motion to close, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
And again, this is 15 years, as I understand it.
That is correct.
Well, as a step in the right direction, I'll vote aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
5 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne amending an encroachment agreement with QOZ Prospect Property Urban Renewal LLC for certain encroachments associated with 33 Prospect Avenue, which is identified as Block 455, Lot 1.01, as shown on the official tax map of the city, which was introduced and passed the first reading at the meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin boards required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing.
Excuse me, Mr. Skillner, can you tell us the exact address for the public, please?
Sure. This is 33 Prospect.
Okay,
Yeah, this is the corner of Prospect Avenue and 22nd.
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
And a resolution moved by Councilmember Weimer, giving the ordinance second reading. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance of the City of Bayonne amending an encroachment agreement with QOZ Prospect Property Urban Renewal LLC for certain encroachments associated with 33 Prospect Avenue, which is identified as Block 455, Lot 1.01, as shown on the official tax map of the city. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
So moved.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Per our discussion, 06, I will read, and then I will take a motion to table.
Motion.
Well, I'm going to have to read it first. An ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, New Jersey, approving an amended and restated financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Bayonne Redevelopers Residential Block 780 Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 155 Goldsboro Drive, which is identified as Block 790, Lot 1.01, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne, which was introduced and passed a first reading at the meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal, and posted on the bulletin boards required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And who'd like the motion to table to October 18th?
I'll move it.
Second.
And on that motion, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
07 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, New Jersey, approving an amended and restated financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Bayonne Redeveloper Residential Block 780 Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 110 Goldsboro Drive, which is identified as Block 722, Lot 1, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne, which was introduced and passed the first reading at the meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin boards required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And as per discussion, I'll take a motion to table. And on the motion to table, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
08 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, New Jersey, adopting the amendment to the 218-222 Broadway redevelopment plan, which property is identified as Block 319, Lot 26, as shown on the official tax map of the city pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law, which was introduced and passed first reading at the meeting held August 16, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution moved by Councilmember Carroll, giving the ordinance second reading. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance adopting an amendment to the 218-222 Broadway redevelopment plan, which is identified as Block 319, Lot 26, as shown on the official tax map of the city. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
So move.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
So move.
And on the resolution for final passage, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
09 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances of the City of Bayonne, Chapter 7, which was introduced and passed the first reading at the meeting held August 16th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of September 20th, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution moved by Councilmember Perez, giving the ordinance second reading. Mr. Carroll, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution for second reading, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance of the City of Bayonne amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances of the City of Bayonne, Chapter 7, Traffic. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
So move.
On the motion to close, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
So move. Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Our first speaker is Melissa Rodriguez.
Good evening, Melissa Godesky Rodriguez, 148 Avenue F. I have a few things. I'm going to speak a little fast. I just want to start off with a very positive thing. I'm very proud to say I'm from the city of Bayonne, and the way our Sergeant Rhodes and Chief Geisler handled a situation that occurred in front of my house yesterday was nothing less than phenomenal. We have something to be very proud of with the team that we have here and addressing our concerns. I'm sure some of you are aware. I don't want to go into it, but I want to commend the behavior and how it was handled. Really means a lot to my family, and I'm confident that that won't happen to anybody else. A few things. So I see some ordinances starting at 014, parking on prohibited streets, prohibited U-turns. I'm not beating a dead horse here. Parking is still continuing to get worse. Okay, we're making all these amendments. we're still not looking at enforcing 24-hour parking. As many of these developments, as you're aware, they have to pay for parking. It's getting worse. The developments are beginning on the east side. I'll speak for the east side because that's where I live. It's going to get worse. Okay, I'm just asking so politely and respectfully that even if it's a temporary enforcement of the area, be taken into account for the residents that live there. School awareness sign went up. I'm super happy about that. I know I kind of mentioned it at a meeting, so thank you. I'd love to see some permanent signs go up, though, as these developments and maybe construction vehicles or people that are working in the property forget that there's schools nearby. Last thing we need is an injury that can be prevented by just spreading some awareness. Lots of redevelopment studies, right? We're assessing these areas for redevelopment, in need of redevelopment. We need to assess these areas for schools. We can build as much as we want, but if we don't look at what can we do for the kids and the teachers in this city, it's not going to go over well. I can't imagine any developer in this room sitting here saying they want to build where people can live and not be able to send their kids to school. We have amazing educators. Okay, we have amazing people that work in our buildings. It's about time that we look at, say, what can we do? Not what can't we do. There's things that you guys have in place that we cannot change, but there's things that can be done going forward to support the growth of this city. Schools are critical parts of effective and productive communities. Okay? It's just sad that we keep seeing redevelopment, but we're not seeing any movement in the area of what can developers do for our schools currently? Are they part of this financial agreement where we're saying, yeah, we get a percentage? Are we really, really asking that question, saying, what can you do for the school? What are you going to do for the schools that are currently here? It's okay to ask the question. You guys work together as a team. They're on your team. They want to build here. You guys want them here. It just has to be a two-way street, and I just still feel like we're not making any progress. I just still feel like we're building, and we're forgetting about the kids. It's what we're here for. They're your future. They're in charge of your SSI. They're in charge of your retirement funds. They're going to be taking care of you when you have grandkids. Let's do for them, too. We owe it to them. We have great kids here. We have great educators. I just think we need to take a look at it and look at it very differently. I just think that any developer listening or getting their abatement approved, think about what you can do for our schools when you make that deal. Thank you.
And just to answer one of your things, I had a discussion on Thursday with the mayor about 24-hour enforcement, so we're hoping for some changes on that soon.
I appreciate that. I'm sure other residents will too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
George Vick?
I'm good, thank
Okay. And Jason Gass?
I'm good.
Okay. Moving on. 010 is an ordinance for introduction. It is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, approving a financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and B9 LaFonte Owner Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 69-73 LaFonte Way, which is identified as Block 412, Lot 3, as shown on the official tax map of the city. And a resolution moved by the Council President fixing Wednesday, October 18th, at 7 p.m. in the Dorothy E. Harrington Council Chambers as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll? Aye. Mr. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Weimer?
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa?
Aye.
Before we do O11, we're going to move R13 out of order. And R13 is approving the amended and restated redevelopment agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and 26 North Avenue Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 26 North Street, which is identified as Block 297, Lot 3, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne. Resolution is moved by Council President La Palusa. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Well, I'd like to bring some people up to talk about this.
You have a question you want Mr. Skillender, or?
Yeah, I'd like to
And
read
then we
into the
can-
record.
And then, Mr. Maselli, we may need you for a couple questions as well.
But we have
Yeah.
our current counsel there, John, at the end.
John?
Maybe want to introduce this.
Yeah, why don't I give a little bit of a background here. Hi, everyone. John Wichiscala. I'm redevelopment counsel for the city. We have we have a resolution and we have an ordinance. The resolution that is being proposed is a resolution authorizing the execution of an amended redevelopment agreement and further instructing the planning board to reopen the redevelopment plan for this particular site. What we're talking about is 26 North Avenue. A little bit of history on this. This is actually a redevelopment project that was approved back in 2015. It's a project in a redevelopment area that allows for densities and heights up to 22 stories. The project, as it was approved in 2015, granted approvals for what was actually the first phase of a multi-phase project for the first tower at a height of 22 stories. I believe 170 units, and it also had ground floor retail on it. The RDA was executed back in 2015. There was a financial agreement that was approved, I believe it was either 2017 or 2018, though the financial agreement, for whatever reason, was never executed. The developer has not commenced construction with respect to this project back in May, and the redeveloper is represented by Mr. Maselli. They submitted a request to the council for an extension of the timeframes within the redevelopment agreement to commence construction. The reasons for not proceeding that have been cited include pandemic, COVID, supply chain issues, and things of that nature. We've engaged in dialogue with the redeveloper in this regard because I think there's a changing sentiment with respect to a project that was approved in 2015 versus where we are today in 2023, and I think a lack of desire to see a building of that size or multiple buildings of that size. What the redeveloper is proposing is an amended plan that would reduce the maximum height permitted in this zone to 14 stories, up to a maximum number of units, a maximum number of 500 units, some ground floor retail. And that's essentially the genesis of the request. They are asking that the approval for the 22-story structure remain in effect or essentially be extended until such time as the city takes the necessary steps to amend the redevelopment plan to provide for these limitations and restrictions. And then they subsequently come in before our planning board and seek the necessary site plan approvals. So that's really the genesis of what we have here before the council tonight. And I think I've given enough of a summary understanding. Mr. Maselli is here, and I candidly would like to defer to him to come up and speak to the council. He can give everyone more specifics on it. And then I think you're in a better position to consider both the requests as it relates to the an amended redevelopment agreement, as well as the ordinance which pertains to the financial agreement. We do have a draft redevelopment agreement. I think by and large, the nuts and bolts are there. I think there are some terms that probably need to be tightened up a little bit. I just would really call that just the lawyering stuff, making specific timeframes regarding if the council were inclined to take this action, timeframes for adoption of a plan, timeframes for moving forward with an application and the like. I think most of those things, the type of minor things that if this council authorizes the RDA, they would be handled by myself in consultation with Mr. Coffey as well as Joe Skillender. If there were to be any substantial changes, beyond just, legalese and the like, well, then chances are we'd come back before you again before we take that, take another action or actually execute the document. But that being said, Mr. Maselli is standing here. and I'm going to turn the floor over to him, unless, of course, any council members have any questions of me at this time.
No, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah,
We may
absolutely.
have some
Yeah.
questions
Sure,
after you
that's-
speak.
Absolutely.
And it was mentioned about community benefits several times
Yeah.
tonight, so if you can include
We'll
that
discuss
as
that,
well.
sure.
I was going to defer that discussion, Council President.
Yes, okay, so, hello, everyone, my name is Michael Maselli, I represent the redeveloper of this project, 26 North Avenue Urban Renewal LLC. It's really the Cali family, from the Mac Cali name, the brand. They came to Bayonne in 2015, looked at 26 North, looked at its location. You can literally throw a stone and hit the light rail station. So they worked with the city, I worked with the city with them to get this redevelopment plan that contemplated a two-tower building, 22 stories. It was a different time in Bayonne, as we've discussed. It was probably one of the sparks that helped light off the renaissance that we've all been experiencing. I can't tell you the number of calls I got after they saw that Bayonne approved something of that height. So if anything, it served as a catalyst for other projects to happen. So it's not all bad when you talk about height. It did make an impact in the development community, and if it did just that, then it was worth it. So, as I said, we got this approval back, Mr. Witcher-Scala said we got this approval from the planning board back in 2015. We executed the redevelopment agreement at the end of 2016. And because the redevelopment agreement gave us a long lead time for construction, knowing that this would be the first building of its type in Bayonne, we went back to the planning board and asked for extensions of those approvals so that everything lined up. So we went in, I think it was 2017 we applied, 2018 we got the pilot. We finalized it, and I think I have to look back, I was at a different firm then, but I think we finalized it for execution maybe a week before the world shut down in March of 2020, and it never got executed. So when the world shut down, as Mr. Witcher-Scala mentioned, a lot of things happened, supply chain issues, material shortages, labor shortages, there was a shutdown in non-essential construction for a while. Rents were not being paid. Investors got skittish, especially on a product like this. Like I said, the first of its kind in Bayonne. So it took what was a difficult project to begin with and made it impossible during that time. And so we lost that time. And so we came back to the city recently and said, hey, it just expired, or about to expire our timelines for the redevelopment agreement. Can we extend these? And the response we got back was, nah, not really. We're not going to do that because 22 stories down there is just not going to fly anymore. So we said, okay. So we negotiated. We went back and forth. I think we came back at 16. I think maybe it was Mr. LaPalooza who came back and said 14. So we agreed 14's it. That's what we would be willing to go to. That's how we can move this along. But that's not all we did. It wasn't just the negotiation and the height. It was presented to us that there would be a contribution that would come along with this. If we were going to do some sort of amended project, we would have to give some public benefit back. And we have agreed to provide a $750,000 contribution for the construction of an animal shelter in Bayonne, which I think everyone here has probably heard or seen or read something about that issue in Bayonne. I know my client at A&P, Mr. Cotter, we had to pay for relocation of some cats, a cat colony. I know it's a problem in Bayonne. Animal control is a problem when they demolished the old bridge. A lot of wildlife got spread throughout the city. So it would be a really good public benefit to get that, and that was something that was presented again in our negotiations with Mr. LaPalooza. So that's what we're looking to do. We shaved off a lot of stories. It's going to be about 80, 90 feet. That's ballpark. I'm not an engineer, but it's bigger than most of the buildings in Bayonne that we would be taking off. And giving back something more, something a little bit more. I think the contributions we were going to make under the old plan was somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000, so this is exponentially more. The reason why we need to extend the old approvals, so we have a loan on this property, and a loan that is due. And if we don't have some approvals in place with protection, because make no mistake, the approval's still in place. That's what we have to, what has expired is the zoning protection of that approval. And we can still build, but the bank wants to know that it's protected. Zoning protection under the MLU is a very specific thing. And so that's what's lapsed. So
we have to get some sort of protection for the approval that exists while we go to get the other one. Otherwise, they're going to call our loan. And the Callies they're a successful family, but writing a multi-million-dollar check is going to hurt anybody. So we would like to avoid that. They're already paying penalties on that loan right now. And it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the quicker we move forward towards getting this building reduced, the better it is for you, the better it is for us, and the better it is for the community now that we're going to do this contribution. So I would ask that the council approve or start to move this is the financial agreement, right, that's introed?
We actually moved the
Yeah,
redevelopment plan.
Yeah,
up.
we're actually
You're going to
talking
move the R,
about
you're going to move R
yeah,
up?
so we're-
Okay, so there are two items on. I would ask that you move both of them and approve both of them so that we can get these approvals with the protections that they need, so we can get the approvals that the city wants now. It really was a negotiation back and forth. It was a public-private negotiation that I think yields a much better project, a more appropriate use of this land. But it's a really good property. You can't find a better property in Bayonne when it comes to transit development. So we want something to happen there. Obviously, we're going to be working hard to do that. We're going to be working hand in hand with you. There will be a redevelopment plan that comes before you that you will have ultimate say over. So this is not the final word on it. It's just help us get out of the financial nightmare. Give us what we need for the zoning protection, and we'll give you what you want and what you need for the city.
And Mr. Maselli, tell us about some of the retailers that we would have the potential of attracting with the building of this magnitude and on this
Right.
level.
So, yes, thank you. So when retailers come, they have a checklist, right? There's a demographic that they're looking for. There's a certain amount of money that needs to be made in a certain radius, certain level of education, certain level of, they have a checklist. And we're trying to get places like Trader Joe's to come in because we know that there's a deficiency. A&P closed, ShopRite closed, Pagano's. This site was the old Pagano's. It was Twin City. One reminded me, Councilman Perez reminded me, it was Twin City Supermarkets. And I used to go there all the time. My wife grew up on 5th Street, so we used to go over there all the time. There's nothing downtown anymore. So we're looking for something nice, a good grocer that will stay there, and something nice like a Trader Joe's. They have a checklist. It's very hard to convince them to come anywhere. Like we tried with Starbucks for years to attract Starbucks. Then all of a sudden one day, everything tilted and they're here now. And so we're trying to create the demographic that they need to be able to say, Bayonne is where we want to be. If it's not Trader Joe's, we want to make it someplace like that. To do that, we have to do something a little bit more. So you can build a 6-story building, and you can ask Mr. Wichiscala, a high-end retailer is not going to come for that. For you to attract a high-end retailer, you have to have a little bit better building. This 14-story building is built differently. It's a different market that you market to, and the demographic will be a higher demographic that could attract a Trader Joe's. We want to give ourselves at least a puncher's chance to get it, and that's our goal. I mean, I think we amended the redevelopment plan 2019. I can't remember when it was, but we amended it specifically to allow for a supermarket use because that's, I think, what everybody wants, and they're trying. Trust me, and we'll keep trying.
And you want to advise what square footage for retail is?
Well, listen, I know that we have agreed that we'll do at least 4,000, but we can make the redevelopment plan say whatever you want it to say. And that's what we're going to go back and forth on. I know that the square footage for a Trader Joe's, for example, is, I'm not sure. John, do you know what their minimum square footage is off the top of your head? I don't. What is it? All right, so, that's the thing, we're going to do at least that, but if we get a Trader Joe's, we're going to want to do that, you know what I mean? So we have to build that flexibility in to make sure that if we snag that on the line, that it doesn't get away from us.
So, and just so everyone's aware, I was just talking to Director Skillender, 15,000, although I've actually seen smaller. They built one in Florham Park that I think is more in like the 10 to 12 range, is the one by your McDonald's.
My McDonald's, if only I made the money off the burgers. But yeah, so it's something more substantial, but that's what we wanted initially, and I think that the scope of the commercial was much grander when we were at 22 stories. We might have been even in the 20s and 30s. I'm going off memory, so I don't remember. But that's the goal, is to get something like that.
Mr. Maselli.
Yep.
All well and good, and the hope is that things like that will happen. My concern is trying to protect that neighborhood from a 22-story tower, because I thought it was lunacy in 2015. I wasn't sitting here. I don't know what went on at the planning board or here, quite frankly, but now the idea of 2 and 3 and possibly a 4th tower, again, lunacy. To live, for half of the people I represent to live in darkness, in the shadow of towers like that, in an area of this city that is marked, that is most recognizable for its 1 and 2 family homes, is something I don't understand how it even got off the ground. But here we are. So looking at R13, my whole concern, and you've said now on the record, is that going forward, this resolution is 14 stories, which again, I make no secret, I think is not good, and I'm not happy with. But I'd rather take the lesser of two evils in this instance. And there's people that would have lived in the shadow of 22 that now, 8 stories have come off that building, and I'm not thrilled. And I'll make my decision in a moment about this, but I want to say again, this resolution is about 14.
Correct.
And you, from today forward, in your dealings with your client and the banks and so on and so forth, that's all going to reflect 14 stories.
Yes.
Because I don't want to be here a month from now when we get the redevelopment plan back potentially, and then find out, oh, no, it's this, it's that, it's it. Again, for all to hear, 14, all this community give back, fantastic. But for the people down there that now have to live with a horrible choice, once again, that we're faced with because of wrong decisions in the past, it's 14. You and your client and your banks are all going to deal with 14, and the material in this resolution, so that a month from now, I'm looking at this again for potential approval and no changes, no alteration. And this will take up the entirety of the site and eliminate any future phases. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I want to make sure I got all your
Oh, yes,
questions.
yeah,
I'm writing it all down.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
yes, 14 stories is going to be the max that we do. I think we tried to build some flexibility for us to say, if we can do it in less than that, or if it's, if it works out that we need less than that, we'll do that. But 14 is what we're going for. That's what we're going to do, right? That's what, everybody says if you give them 14 stories, they're coming in for 14 stories. 14 stories probably what we're going to come in for, but we haven't designed this site fully. We have designed it or done a massing study enough to know that there will be no potential for future phases of this. This will be a one-phase project, unlike the other one where there was one phase with one tower and a second one where there was another tower. This will be one phase, one build, and that's it. So there won't be a 22-story tower waiting down the road for you.
Exactly.
If that's what you're worried about.
And that's what I want to make clear to the public.
Yeah.
This action leads us down the road of future phases and creates a situation where that location is maxed out at this height.
Yes, and I actually think we might have added this language in recently where we've given assurances to the city that while we're moving forward in this redevelopment process, once you've given us the extensions, that we are not going to go pull a permit. Because, first of all, the Callies would never pull a fast one. If they give you their word they're not going to do that, they wouldn't. But we're memorializing it in the agreement, that you give us the extensions for the 22, and we're not going to run to the building department in 6 months if we get the financing and say, oh, we got one. We're not going to do that. So we memorialize that, or we try to. We might have to tighten the language, and that's what Mr. Witcher-Scala and I will do over the next couple of months, or the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And so you have further assurance that we are not going to move back to the 22-story project. And if we're moving forward with this 14 stories, we want to do it. We want to do it expeditiously. We want to keep the continuity of having protected approvals, but we want to get what the city needs as soon as we can.
And we're going to do our best to make this timely, to get that redevelopment agreement
Absolutely.
done.
And that's,
And we're going to expect the same from you with the site
yes.
plan.
No, it's in everyone's
So
interest.
you're going to have to give us some time frame
Absolutely.
to make that timely so this happens.
Yeah, and we will work that out with council, with the input from everyone here, and we will, it is in our interest to get this done quickly, as it is in the city's interest.
And I'm really happy that this will be just the one building. I was happy that it came down 8 stories. Originally, it was supposed to be 6 stories.
Correct.
And we negotiated that down
Correct.
to 8 stories, taken off, down to 14.
Right.
The
Mr. Maselli, just
parking-
before
the
you
parking-
go.
Just one
Yeah.
second. The parking, you had said, could be possibly 2 floors, but you'll figure that out.
Yeah, we're
with
not,
us,
we're,
the
yeah,
plan.
we're so far, we're in the early stages, it's called a massing study, just to see what you can get and what configurations and what geometry. But as we go along in the design process, we'll work through it with your professionals, with Ms. Mack and Mr. Skillender and the rest of the Bayonne professionals, to figure out exactly what it looks like.
And the other thing I wanted to reiterate is the community benefit.
Yes,
The reason it was my suggestion about the animal shelter is because this has been going on. I've been involved in politics for 20 years. In the beginning of my politics, they had all kinds of raffles. Some of the animal leagues would do fundraisers. They raised a lot of money. They wound up spending the money. So I donated for something that never happened. I know if we didn't get a community benefit such as this from a developer, that I don't think this money would ever be allotted for that.
right.
I don't want it to be a burden on the city. We'll probably try and get somebody from the outside to run this. And I'm really happy that it was $750,000. I think, I'm not a big proponent of tall buildings, as we all know historically. I fought against some. Some fit in certain areas and some don't. That area has a lot of commercial entities around it. So that's the reason why I think it could possibly work in this area. And so I think you've answered most of my questions. I think there's a big upside to this. I worry about the area that's fallow right now. If this wasn't built, what would it be? How many years would it be before this was built or resold or what have you? Those are all the things that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the shadows, but I do remember that there was some sort of study
There
done
was.
on the shadows.
Yes.
That was with the 22-story.
Yes.
I don't really know all the parameters, but I remember I was told that the shadows would be more in the winter than the summer, believe it or not. And I was a little surprised at that, and I was on the planning board at that time.
Right.
With that, Jackie, you have a couple questions?
Mr. Maselli, the new footprint of this building, this proposed building, 14 stories, is that going to take up the entirety of that site? Is there some other intended use for any remaining space now that there's no Phase 2 and 3 down the line? What is the potential for the remainder of that property?
The massing study that I saw, which is crude, did show articulation in the building so that it wasn't property line building right here and throughout the whole thing. Then it wasn't a mass right at the property line, like the one we showed you for First Savings, where there was some articulation and some setback. That will come with design, and with this, we can incorporate that into the redevelopment plan, which might wind up yielding less than the 500 units. That's why we said up to. So we have to go through all those design things with your professionals, and if that's a concern, voice that concern to them, make sure it winds up in the plan, that it's not right up on the property line. Like I said, the crude massing that I've seen doesn't show the entirety of the building. It does show some articulation along the frontage.
And any potential grocery store, Trader Joe's, Wegmans is going to look for sufficient parking?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there was I can't remember the parking standard that we put in for supermarkets, but it's fairly robust. And, there's always the option that we all hate doing in Bayonne is digging
Right.
into the ground. Just ask the people who were around the Resnick's project when they were chipping the rock up there.
Right, and then the only
My
other
accountant
thing-
is up there and he was ready to kill me. It's like, all I hear all day is dunk, 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 dunk.
As you know, we had
Sorry.
one of our residents commented tonight, it's obviously an existing problem here, parking in Bayonne. So parking provided, not offered.
Yes, and we
Thank
can
you.
incorporate that either into the redevelopment plan, or we can incorporate that into the amended redevelopment agreement. If you would like, we can do that.
I do.
And yeah, so that, yeah, we understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess, one thing I would like to just speak to, and I don't know that I mentioned it or Mike mentioned it, and this goes to Neil, I think some of your concerns when you talk about us extending the 22-story, the approvals and so forth. And you heard Mike say, so long as we're proceeding with the amended redevelopment plan, they're not going to come in and pull building permits, but they're still going to have their approvals in place. The redevelopment agreement is going to provide, so we really have two milestones here. Planning board has to come up with an amended redevelopment plan that, has all these restrictions and will definitely provide for parking, by the way. That I assure you, to be accounted for. We amend the redevelopment plan. They come in for site plan in a timely fashion, and we're going to have,
Absolutely.
we're going to have a time frame in there. They need time for design and so forth, but to try to expedite that as quickly as possible. Once Mike comes in and gets his planning board approvals, if this whole concept is approved, at that point, the 22-story approval will then expire.
Goes away.
Because essentially, we're coming in anyway, they're coming in with a new site plan, so that now replaces the site plan that they have
Supersedes the old-
presently, so. So that's a story. We actually haven't talked about outside agency approvals. I don't even know what you need,
I
but.
think we needed FAA last
yeah,
time because
so-
of the airport, but
and
we
that-
won't need it now,
that
so.
may still be applicable, but.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately the backstop on this. When does the 22 stories end? It ends when they have site plan approval, because at that point, they have a new approval, and there's no longer a redevelopment plan in place that allows for 22 stories.
Correct.
It's got the maximum of 14 stories, et cetera. So
Yep.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. No, thank you, John. I forgot about that. Yep.
Anybody have any more questions for Mr. Maselli? Waste removal.
Waste removal.
Always will be private hauler.
Private
That's
hauler.
that's in every redevelopment agreement now,
Yeah.
as is something about parking too, right? It's a restriction that we put in every redevelopment agreement now.
Okay.
Yes, I know.
Mr.
That's
Maselli,
Mr. Cotter's baby, right? Getting that in there?
Mr. Maselli, are they
it'll be
going to
there.
do a traffic study there? at that
Of
area?
course, yeah. With every submission, we, especially of a building this magnitude, there will be a traffic report.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So on bar 13, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Once again, it's a decision to be made between what I consider to be two horrible choices, but one is a little less. And in this instance, with the assurances provided by Mr. Maselli, who was very forthright up here, and our own attorneys, we have a crack team, I feel fairly confident in voting for this. I vote aye, that 14 is better than 22, and it's a whole heck of a lot better than 3 or 4 22-story towers.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Again, I think this is a home run. I think it's the windfall of new income, taxable income. Much-needed cleanup of a land that right now does not look really great. The animal shelter, $750,000 community benefit, possible supermarket downtown. I see nothing but upside, and I vote aye.
011 is an ordinance for introduction. It's an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, approving the amended and restated financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and 26 North Avenue Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 20 North Street, which is identified as Block 297, Lot 3, as shown on the official tax map. And a resolution moved by Councilmember Perez fixing Wednesday, October 18th, as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. Mr. La Palusa, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
There's a lot of things I want to see between now and next month, but aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
012 is an ordinance approving an amended and restated financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and 197 Avenue E Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 197 Avenue E, which is identified as Block 222, Lot 12.02, as shown on the official tax map, and a resolution moved by the council president fixing Wednesday, October 18th as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
013 is an ordinance approving the redevelopment plan for the property located at 80-84 East 25th Street, which is identified as Block 442, Lot 14, as shown on the official tax map of the city pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law, and a resolution fixing Wednesday, October 18th, in the Dorothy E. Harrington Council Chambers as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It's moved by Mr. Perez. Ms. Weimer, will you second?
Madeline, I appreciate that you did ask me to second, because before we do so, Joe, if you don't mind, just because I got a couple of questions and calls from residents in that area, and I'm not opposed, I'm going to go on the record saying I'm not opposed to this project, but I would like Joe to explain it so that our viewers that are watching can get a better understanding of what it is.
Sure. So again, for the redevelopment plan that was put in front of the planning board, this is an old warehouse that exists on East 25th Street between Prospect and Avenue F. Again, it's always good to understand the history as how we got here. So initially, the property, the current property owner bought the property for a potential use of a warehouse there, as it was currently a warehouse. He went in front of the zoning board and was shot down. So he now owns a property that he cannot use as a warehouse and is just sitting there vacant. Paying the property taxes, the maintenance and upkeep on that. So therefore, he approached the city to talk about possibly for redevelopment into either continuing to be used as a warehouse, which we cannot use the local redevelopment law to supersede a zoning board. So it's the change of use of it came to this current form of it, which is multi family residential. So on the site here, really it's very there was a concerted effort to make sure that it's not very impactful onto the community. In reality, just on the design, it's 12 units that are going to be built here on the property. It's it's a larger property that's I think it's 75 by 100. So you could fit three two-family homes here. Or in reality, it's going to be 3 4-family homes on that 75 by 100. We took some design standards too into the facade to make sure that it's not a monolithic building, that it's broken up into there, and it's again there was a concerted effort to make sure that it still met the characteristics of the residential neighborhood that it is.
Great. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Sure, you're welcome.
I'll second, Madeline.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
014 is an ordinance amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances of the City of Bayonne, Chapter 7, Traffic, and a resolution fixing October 18th in the Dorothy E. Harrington Council Chambers as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It's moved by Councilmember Perez. Ms. Weimer, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
015 is an ordinance amending and supplementing the revised general ordinance of the City of Bayonne, Chapter 7, Traffic, and a resolution fixing Wednesday, October 18th, in the Dorothy E. Harrington Council Chambers as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It's moved by Councilmember Carroll. Mr. Booker, will you second? Second. On the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
I just want to say I sponsored this legislation, and I appreciate what I hope to be the full support of the council. It essentially makes it illegal to make a U-turn on the entirety of Broadway, which at one point it was only illegal to do so between 16th and 26th Street, period of 10 blocks. That was the commercial zone or considered to be at that point, but Broadway has livened up a bit, and there have been issues and incidents, so this now takes it the entire length. I vote aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
16 also amends Chapter 7 Traffic And it's moved by Councilmember Perez. Mr. Booker, will you second?
Who did you ask to second?
Mr. Booker.
Oh.
And on that resolution, 016, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
017 also amends Chapter 7 Traffic and a resolution fixing Wednesday, October 18 as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. Would like to move it.
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Communications is a resolution moved by the council as a whole, ordering the following communications to be received and filed. It covers C1 through C6. Any questions on the communications? And on the communications, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Officers' report is a resolution moved by the council as a whole. It's ordering the following officers' reports to be received and filed, and any resolutions incorporated within them to be adopted. It covers OR 1 through OR 3. Any questions on OR officers' reports? And on the officers' reports, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Consent agenda for resolutions is also moved by the council as a whole. It's a resolution ordering the following resolutions to be adopted. It covers CR 1 through CR 23. Any questions on the consent resolution? And on the consent resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R1 is authorizing the mayor and/or his designee to enter into a tax appeal settlement agreement with MPT of Bayonne LLC and IJKG OPCO LLC for 407-421 Avenue E, which is identified as Block 159, Lots 1415, Blocks 164, Lots 5 and 6, and Block 420.02, Lot 2, and authorizing the mayor and/or his designee to take any and all actions necessary to effectuate this resolution and resulting judgment. It's moved by the council president. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez. Aye. Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
2 is adopting changes to the existing deferred compensation plan pursuant to the final Internal Revenue Code Section 415 Regulations Pension Protection Act of 2006, the Heroes Earning Assistance and Relief Tax Act of 2008, and the Workers' Retiree Employment Recovery Act of 2008. Would like to move it.
Move it.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R3 is awarding a contract for the improvements to the Sister Miriam Teresa Park to Paterno Giordano Construction LLC for the bid amount of $251,254.90.
Second.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R4 is adopting a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment study for the property located at 173-179 Avenue F, which is identified as Block 442, Lots 6, 7, 8, and 9, as shown in the official tax map of the city as a non-condemnation area of need of redevelopment, and authorizing and directing the planning board to prepare a redevelopment plan for said property.
Move it.
Mr. Skillender, could we have a moment, Gary? I apologize.
Sure, it's okay.
Would you mind?
So again, just for our 4, 5, and 6, as they're similar with the process, what's in front of you right now for consideration is the Planning Board has conducted a study along with our professionals, Ms. Suzanne Mack, and our consulting planner, Brian Slough. And in that, again, for this property and for the next 3, they've identified the criteria met for the areas of redevelopment. And in that, again, these are requirements that are set by state statute. And that they found that these properties, met that, and can be a range of a couple things of, abandonment of the use, vacancy of the lots in the UEZ zone, to the sort of it. But also, again, on, this is a process in the redevelopment plan area for it. The current zone, for this project is in the transit district overlay, which, again, permits up to 7 stories here. The proposed use, again, upon the adoption of this resolution tonight, would authorize the planning board, to, create a redevelopment plan for that. The request, again, from the property owner and the developer on this, that it, will be, it should be multifamily residential, again, kind of consistent to, the zoning that's, permitted under the TDO here. But again, that's, the planning board, can evaluate that and look into it, and while it's open, can again, put the parameters, on the height and density and the bulk standards, again, that meets the council's need, and that's also consistent with our master plan.
And Director Skillinger, just one more time, tell me, what is the current zoning and the current allowance for that area, the transit district overlay?
So the current district overlay, again, permits, multitude of uses there. Again, it was designed, to encourage, public transportation. So it granted, height, it granted multifamily. It does grant, single and 2-family homes there. But again, it's up to, depending on the usage of the building, up to 7 stories.
Sorry, okay, thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Moved by Mr. La Palusa. Who'd like the second?
Second.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R5 is adopting a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment study for the property located at 1012-1022 Avenue C, which is identified as Block 64, Lots 2 and 3, as shown on the official tax map of the city as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment, and authorizing and directing the planning board to prepare a redevelopment plan for said property.
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R6 is also adopting the area in need redevelopment study for the property located at 15-21 East 23rd Street, which is identified as Lot 198, Lots 1 and 2, as shown on the official tax map of the city as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment, and authorizing and directing the planning board to prepare a redevelopment plan for said property. Would like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R7 is authorizing and directing the planning board to reopen and prepare amendments to the scattered site redevelopment project, Phase 2, Site 14, Route 440 redevelopment plan pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law.
Move it.
And a second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Can I speak to Mr. Skillinger? Can you give me a little bit more on this background on this project?
Sure. So again, for the request here for this, again, as what was discussed in, closed session, and again, to protect the attorney-client privilege as there's active settlement discussions on that, but ultimately, again, the request that's being voted upon tonight is that a redevelopment plan be reopened for the planning board to discuss all uses and the bulk standards for that. So again, this will allow for the redesign for everything for that on, uses, and also can add uses to the redevelopment plan which currently exist, but it can also take out the, uses there. Also, part of the things too can be, again, to address, flood hazards for the area, environmental, contamination cleanups, all sorts of stuff that, again, with the redevelopment plan open, gives our professionals, Ms. Suzanne Mack and Brian Slough, the ability, and the rest of the redevelopment team, the ability to, draft a redevelopment plan that, again, suits the, the property owner's needs, for, a vacant, abandoned, concrete site right now that has no improvements on it, to a, viable, property that, again, goes back on our tax ratables and, again, has an improvement on, the property.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye. Madeline, we're going to table R8.
R9 is approving the consent of transfer of the redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Peninsula Lost Urban Renewal LLC to 197 Avenue E Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 197 Avenue E, which is identified as Block 221, Lot 12.01. Would like to move it. You're not moving R9?
So move.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
I'd like a little bit more explanation on this.
So on this resolution, what's in front of you, so part of the redevelopment agreements and financial agreements, there's a provision in there that when a property owner sells the approvals that they have, because the approvals run with the land, there's some protections there that the city on the city's end for us to review and, again, qualify the developer. And so it's, again, we have to consent to the transfer of that sale and the transfer of the rights of those agreements. So again, in this case, the developer, original property owner, Peninsula Lofts Urban Renewal, sold the property to 197 Avenue E Urban Renewal, and the 197 Avenue E Urban Renewal has made the request to the city that these rights be transferred for the redevelopment agreements and the financial agreements to that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of legalese that
Yes.
sometimes I don't understand.
Yes.
And I'd like to make informed decisions, that's why I just keep pulling you up.
Yep.
No,
Look,
they're all
that's what I'm here for it, and again, there's all, you've already, voted on, or at least to introduce the amended and restated financial agreement, and again, the next one, is again tied to this on the redevelopment agreement, for there, which, if need be, I could speak to on that.
Yeah, don't go far.
I won't.
Stay
Never do.
close.
Thank you.
Lloyd, they're all good questions, too. All
Thank you.
good
I'd
questions.
like to make informed decisions, that's why.
So on R9, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R10 is approving the redevelopment agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and 197 Avenue E Urban Renewal LLC for the property located at 197 Avenue E.
So move.
Second.
Director, would you describe the agreement?
Certainly, Councilman Carroll. So for this project here,
You're welcome.
yeah. Yeah. So the project here on this, again, always going back to the history on this, the 197 Avenue E was not the original developer that came, in front of this. There was a prior developer that got the entitlements on there, got a redevelopment plan, went through the site plan on a project, and then sold that off to another developer. In the midst of that, redesign of the project. The developer came back to the city with a plan that was, conformed with the redevelopment plan. It permitted 11 stories of residential units. The total building there is 13. Now, this property here is also the old Villanova site, and it's been vacant and empty, for some time. It sits on the corner of East 19th Avenue E, and also Standard Place next to the one of the affordable housing buildings that we have there. That's, I believe, 9 stories across from there. So for this project, again, talking about some of the community benefits, that are listed in the redevelopment agreement. So, I understand the concerns that the council has on the height here. There's, with the redevelopment plan, though, this was, the zoning was changed that permitted what came under, what the applicant came for the height. But with that said, some of the community, development impacts, if you want to call it, or community benefits for it, they are contributing $500,000 that, going to be dedicated specifically for the Field of Dreams. Currently, right now, while we've done a great job obtaining grant money for that, to the tune of $1.5 million on that, the estimate project costs are about $2 million, and this is, again, going to be used to help cover the gap on that. So, that's the, the voting on the, consideration for this, for the height of the building, but also, again, for the give back to the community of, for a worthwhile project.
It seemed to be a viable topic tonight.
Yes.
Several different people, so.
Yeah.
That's the answer to them. We've done 2 things tonight with a large community give back.
Yes, and again, we're taking a lot of consideration, into that for the future, for other projects too, from all sorts of, looks at of, park improvements, from infrastructure improvements to sewer, water mains.
Does there exist a traffic study for that project?
Well, again, for the traffic study would have been presented in front of the site plan and the planning board on that, which the planning board approved this project already.
Was that pre or post everything that was done with the much larger project slightly up the block and across the street?
This, again, the planning board and our professionals looked at it. I can't speak to the specific facts of the planning board on it. All I know is that the planning board, approved the project based on all the testimony that would have spoken
Would this change the nature of those findings?
No. This is,
My understanding is that the traffic study took into consideration both projects.
Okay.
Okay.
Comfortable with this?
No.
I'll defer to you.
No, I do. I think that the problem we have here is that what is now become customary for that area is something that is uncustomary for the rest of us. However, this was a project that is a long time in the making, and I am torn between maintaining our integrity, because we do have an investor that has come to this city and has spent time and effort and energy and money on an understanding that there was some approvals already in place. And I'm somewhat reluctant to sort of now pull the rug out from under them. However, I would look for the developer to be considerate and to be consistent. I'm going to look for parking to be provided to the residents, not offered an additional fee. I'm going to, and Mr. Maselli is shaking his head for me.
he's the applicant attorney on this,
I-
and it's all in the redevelopment agreements on
I'm
that.
so surprised.
So
No,
for the garbage,
Right.
private hauling.
Garbage is going to be private. These are conversations that we've had. Mr. Maselli and a good number of his clients, at least the ones that have had to listen to me, have been very agreeable and amenable to working with us. So I'm confident that we'll do something that will add to our community and not increase any potential danger, traffic, things of that nature.
And also, just to add one last point to this, so in the developer came in to talk about the project and pitch the initial thing. One of the things that, at least myself and the city's professionals came back and, really pushed for, again, on the setbacks for the sidewalk cafes, to kind of help, get some commercial space along Avenue E as you're walking towards the light rail. We really, made a concerted effort that the building, at least on the front and the lobby, be designed to kind of take into, the ability for the corner to be used as a, ground floor retail space, but geared towards more as a coffee shop, similar to one of the ones that they have up in Union City. Beautiful redesign of it that allows, the windows to open up. You kind of sit, allows fresh air to, move in and out of the building. You sit both on the, the sidewalk and indoors. Again, kind of opens up, creates this unique atmosphere, that, their planner even, went up, had coffee there and, was able to incorporate this in this project. And again, that's one of the things that we're trying to also do of, again, revitalize, streets, make it more active, allow for, our residents, and people visiting Bayonne to, again, sit and enjoy, the outdoors, and give them that, space.
The issue here is we have to focus more on quality as opposed to quantity.
Yes.
So I'm hoping for great things from you, Mr. Maselli, and to raise the bar so that these are statement places to be rather than just another place to be.
And Mike, there's a pool, right?
There is, and it's a Marcello building.
Yes.
The same architect who's shown it.
And I'm of the opinion that most of these multi-unit buildings should be including the parking, because when they don't, it creates another parking problem for all of us and the city.
Yes.
So,
We've worked that out. Mr. Maselli is committed to.
but unfortunately, I
providing.
was told that we cannot do a blanket. It has to be done for each individual
Right.
redevelopment plan. So moving forward, that's what I would like to see, and I think I echo the sentiments of everybody else.
Yes, again, and some of the, the policies of, the wishes of the council, these have become standard languages within our agreements on the redevelopment side and also the financial side, even to that fact of, right now our standard languages in our financial agreements, also include 10% of our pilot payments going to the Board of Education. So it's not like the administration doesn't hear the concerns of the residents and the council of there. Like, we do take those serious, and they are in these agreements right now.
Right. And that 10% was from the city council, making sure it was at
Yes.
5, we upped it to 10.
Yes,
So we are being proactive, this council.
yes.
So I know they come up here and they they have the right to speak on it, but I don't know if they necessarily know the history that we don't have to give them anything in these pilots. We choose to give them 10%.
Yes, and it's, again, for the statute, just for the record, state statute, permits 95% of the pilot payment to the municipality, 5% to the county, and the city's, giving up 10% to, willingly, and happily to the Board of Education.
Right. Thank you,
for
Jeff.
that.
You're welcome.
And on R10, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
No.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R11 is designating 1207-1211 JFK Boulevard Urban Renewal LLC as the redeveloper of the property located at 1207-1211 Kennedy Boulevard, which is identified as Block 24, Lots 2 and 3, as shown on the official tax map, and authorizing the preparation and execution of a redevelopment agreement.
Move it.
Just, Council President, I just want to make one clarification.
Sure.
It's listed this way on the agenda. This is actually just for the preparation of a redevelopment agreement. So sometimes that slides in there, but the resolution that you actually have is just for the preparation. So ultimately, when a redevelopment agreement is finalized, negotiated fully, it'll come back to the council for a formal action, which authorizes its execution.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez. Aye. Ms. Weimer? Aye. Mr. La Palusa?
So just to be clear, we are naming them as redeveloper, which will enact them to make the redevelopment.
Correct. So it is a conditional, it's actually a conditional designation. I should have clarified that as well. So they're only conditionally designated. They don't actually officially become the designated redeveloper until the redevelopment agreement is negotiated,
Okay.
approved for execution. Once that's in effect, then they're officially the redeveloper. And incidentally, all those comments apply to R13 as well when you get to it.
Okay, and so this, when they do the redevelopment agreement, it'll come back to us for the vote then?
That is correct.
Okay, and I vote aye.
R12 is designating Avenue E Lost Urban Renewal LLC as the redeveloper of the redeveloper of the property located at 196-200 Avenue E, which is identified as Block 458, lots 7, 8, and 9, as shown on the official tax map, and authorizing the preparation of a redevelopment agreement.
Move it.
Second.
And on that R12, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mrs. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
I have a couple of add-ons. Add 1 is from the Honorable James M. Davis, Mayor, appointing Robert F. Sloan, Esquire, to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board.
Move it.
Second.
And on that one, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Add 2 is approving the Bayonne UEZ Administrative Fiscal Year 2024 budget for administrative costs, including salaries, office supplies, marketing, and promotions in the amount not to exceed $190,000.
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Add 3 is authorizing the UEZ coordinator to take any and all steps necessary to approve the Bayonne UEZ 2023 Classic Car Show to be held Saturday, September 30th, from 1 to 4 p.m., to be located between 40th and 43rd Street on Broadway.
So
Move
moved.
it.
Second.
And on add 3, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Add 4 is awarding a contract to JanPro to provide janitorial services to the police department for an amount not to exceed $40,771 for a term of 1 year commencing October 1st, 2023.
Second.
And on add 4, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
I have one additional add-on. It is, whereas the Bayonne Board of Economic Opportunity Foundation has agreed to sponsor this year's fire prevention poster contest in conjunction with the Bayonne Fire Department. And whereas the Bayonne Economic Opportunity Foundation will be raising funds for this contest through tax-deductible donations that can be handled through their website, which is www.beof.org. And lauding the city Bayonne Economic Opportunity Foundation for sponsoring the 2023 Fire Prevention Poster Contest, and hereby committing its resources to support the contest as needed to ensure its success.
Move.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
With nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Just one moment, please. Did we already do the Irish Festival?
Yes, that was a consent.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And on the motion to adjourn, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Have a good night, everybody. Aye.